So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is a live stream with live people joining me for my anniversary of making videos for a year. So this is the little art party, and I'm playing with my new Derwent pastels. So these are from Derwent, and these colours represent the same colours in the pencil form. So I've got, for example, 360 is indigo. So 360 is indigo. So they're not named, but they are numbered. And I've been holding this one for quite a while and nothing's come out of it yet. So they're not like pastels, as in they fall to bits, but they probably have a little bit of a coating on them. But they are presumably like traditional pastels. I haven't actually read this, which is very bad. But I wanted them because I want to do a little bit dramatic kind of colours. So at the moment I did play with the Derwent watercolour pencils, and I kind of got a nice effect from using two colours and white. So using the rule of 3. So I've got a very dark and I've got a very pale. Now I'm actually using the pencil because it doesn't have the carmine, and I love the burnt carmine. It's a very dark purple, browny purple, and it's really good for doing shadows on a reddy purple and a reddy colour. So what I intend to do is use the white, and I'm not using the blending white. This is the blendable white. I don't know why I'm not using the blendable white. I'll use the blending white and put the white pastel back then. So if I use the white here on the edge, and I'm not going to blend it with a blending tool, I'm going to blend it with a damp brush, and then there's kind of no messing about. It's in the colour book, it's quite quick, it's quite easy to use. You've got poorly hands because it's a block. So I'm going to put a little bit of pink in next, and then I'm going to manipulate the rest of it kind of with a brush. But I really want some kind of vivid colours. I can do pastel colours, I can do pastel shades. I now want some kind of bright colours, and I've been playing with the Derwent pencils that I bought earlier. Well, I bought them at the same time, and that's the petal that's kind of going down there, so that petal wants to come up there. And I bought the Derwent, if I could put my hands on them, I bought the Derwent oil pastels. So these are different. These are oil based, so they're not water soluble, and these are water soluble, and they look kind of different. There's some really good coverage and some good colours, and they're very, very good quality, and I really enjoyed playing with them. And I'm just trying to put this somewhere I don't drop everything, because I've got quite a lot of art supplies, and so I want to make a difference. And so the one I did today was this, just using the colour of 3. So I had a very dark, and then I had a medium tone, and then I had a lighter orangey tone. I did use lime green in the middle and black, the 2 colours for the stems, and I really like these really bold colours. Now I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get these, but I like the Disney effect, which is kind of going from very pale to very dark. Do apologise, it's feeding time at the zoo. So the burnt carmine, which is 610. Now I have 620, but I don't have 610. 620 is have a look what 620 is. So although these aren't named, they're numbered. So very much like the Inktense blocks. If you look at the Inktense block and you look at the number, you can then look at the Inktense pencil and you can find its name and its counterpart. The same with the pastels. This is why I wanted them. This is from normally a bigger area, then you go in here with some delicate detail. But I kind of want to use these in a different way because I want to have a lot of colour on there, and I could use the pastels, the pencils. It's just I wanted to get these for bigger spaces, and sometimes my hands can't use pencils. They're just that little bit scratchy. The pastels are easy to use for me because you scrape them across, but pencils, where you've got to rub and scrub a bit, is a bit difficult for me. But these are even easier because you kind of really do not need anything to get this colour in there. So I just want to know what 610 is, and 610 is going to be a dark colour. Oh, 610, no, 620, sorry, 610. That's dark sanguine, and actually if you look at if we look at dark sanguine and burnt carmine, oh, there is a difference. I knew there would be, but what I like is that's the kind of dark brown, but then this is a reddy brown. So if you have any nice pinky reds, the burnt carmine is fantastic for doing the darker shadowy areas. So I'm just going to put the tiniest bit in the bottom of the petals, not when the earlier ones are, but just on the bottom ones there. Now I could blend that with a blending tool, but I think I want to use a little water brush, and I do like this Derwent number 1 because it's tiny and it's not very wet, so it's perfect for what I want it for. So I'm just going to activate all the white first, because if you touch any of that red, it's so strong. Activate all that white. I do have a piece of kitchen paper. Oh, and I think I've missed. Did I miss that one? I think that's. I don't think that's a petal. I think that's a space. So I need to put some white on there. Sometimes you've got to concentrate on colour books, especially certain colour books. So I can now go in with this red and drag this down, and in theory I should have quite a nice kind of, oops, you've got to clean your brush there, so maybe I will use drag this colour down. You really want to keep those lovely white crisp areas, but sometimes it's not always easy. Oh, there's the Alfie. So I apologise for Alfie. It's feeding time at the zoo, and so it's terrible times, sorry. So you can get a really nice deep shadow under there. Alfie, shush. I may have to resort to my brush, because you can clean a brush better than you can clean this, and I really don't want anything touching that white really, but I do want a nice blend. So, oops. I didn't zoom in, did I? Should have zoomed in a bit more. Excuse me, I forget with my camera. Oh, thank you, Suzanne. Thanks, Judy. Which one was those, Melody? Was that on the other page? They were the Derwent watercolours. Oopsie, I've taken that off. The Derwent watercolours on this page. So when we look at this, actually, the burnt carmine, this one, on the watercolours, I think I prefer it with watercolours than pastel. It's a little bit softer. But maybe that might be the brush. Let me just change brushes, because in order to get a really nice blended effect, you just need to kind of... And that's why I don't often use water brushes, because you don't get that nice soft blend. But I was quite surprised to get this this dark colour. So there isn't very much in it. So actually, you could, if you had the Derwent watercolour pencils, you can get this very dark effect. They're very underrated, are the Derwent watercolour pencils. This will do bigger spaces, obviously, but I do love the Derwent pencils. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit of this in here, and you've got to remember that this isn't white paper either. This is ivory, so it's not actually white. So again, I think that makes a bit of a difference. For this small space, I probably could use the excuse me, the white pastel pencil actually. So that's quite good. That means I can use the best of both worlds. So I'm a happy girl. But these are really not designed for colour books. These are pastels are designed to work on pastel paper. They're not really designed to be used as a watercolour, and they're not designed to be used in a colour book on a flat surface. So they're doing very well. But I just wanted to show that, you know, you can use what you've got. A little bit of pastel you can use in a colour book. Oil pastels you can use in a colour book. Pencils and watercolour pencils you can use in a colour book. And I'll be using gouache in a minute as well. So it depends on what kind of effect you want, really. Sometimes you want to do a lot of work, and sometimes you just want to colour in a kind of soft way. And that's what I like. I do have lots of different colour books, and I like to work in them in different mediums. I have to say, all water-based. Well, most of them are water-based. I did enjoy doing the poppies, though. Not sure if I would get... I don't know if I would actually get... I'm not sure if I would get these colours, although these are not poppies. I'm not sure if I would get the wax into here. They work better with a slightly bigger space, because you can kind of really rub the colour in as you're working. So it took about an hour to do that, I think. It wasn't very long. And 3 colours. So I like the rule of 3. I like the rule of 3. Now I wonder if you could go back into there. So that, and again, that's dried. Although it's a pastel, I've actually dried it. So I wonder if you could go back in with water, with white. Because normally with pastel you can't do that. And then I wanted that really burnt carmine kind of effect. I love this really dark carmine colour that I found, this burnt carmine. I really like that in the bottom of a deep red, pinky red. It's quite dramatic, and I kind of like that. I've gone from my soft pastel colours. I like this kind of the deeper colours. I quite like these. Oh, hi Grammy, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Thanks for stopping in. Hope everybody's well. Sorry about the noise, it's tea time at the zoo. So this particular size, I probably should do the pastel pencils, but I wanted to play with the pastels. And then I've got this really dark indigo. And then if we just... I'm going to use the very fine brush because you don't need a lot of water. It's just to activate it. And so kind of put in that I quite like these very, very dark colours. Excuse me. I'm just going to swap to a baby wipe. It does work slightly better. If you're using a water brush, you need kitchen paper. But if you're using a brush, you need to keep a little bit of dampness, which is perfect. And I can't find one, so I do have a fairly clean one here that's dried. And the reason is these do not disintegrate, so they're brilliant. So I just dunk mine into my water and then pat it through so it's not too wet. And that would be perfect. So don't throw it away if it's a clean colour, only throw it away if it's completely covered in colour. And then you don't really have to throw it away. If you keep them and dry them, you can use them as pages, as extra layers, and in books, in mixed media, they're fantastic for adding texture, and you've got your colour already absorbed in there, so they are quite good. So must remember to keep the pastels away from the water, though. I don't think that's a good idea to have them too near the water. So at the moment there's still quite a sharp corner on that white, so I can still use it. And I don't have the burnt carmine in the pastel set, so I'm just stolen that from there, and then I'm using my really fine brush. So I'm turning that pastel into a water soluble. So technically, again, it's not a watercolour, but it's reacting like a watercolour, so it'll mix together and then it will be set when I've finished. It doesn't need anything else, doesn't need any fixatives. So you've got some quite vibrant colour there. And I thought you'd need the pastels for that. So amazed, really, really amazed that the Derwent watercolour pencils are really, really very vibrant, because I've always ever used them very pale. So really amazed that that's the Derwent watercolour pencils in the white. I think that's the red. I think that's Rose Madder Lake, and that's burnt carmine. That's olive, that's white, and that's indigo. and these are pastels. So really quite impressed with those watercolour pencils. So again, I've got kind of an olivey green colour with the indigo, because that's in the set of pastels. Oopsie. And then a touch of white. So I like the rule of 3. That's my new find of the year, is the rule of 3. And it is such a tiny space that I am using my 10-0. So my little brush is being dunked and cleaned. And then twisted onto a baby wipe, so it gives me a really nice point. I've got some really nice darks in there, so I kind of like this going from white to almost black, but it isn't a black, it's a coloured black, and that's why I always hate using black. I like making my own, because you get such gorgeous deep shadows and shades. So the carmine is the black of the red, and the indigo is the black of the green leaf. And again, I kind of like maybe a little bit more indigo in that one. Just to kind of give it a little bit more of a gothic-y kind of, I think it's kind of a gothic-y kind of effect. Or fantasy probably is a better word, maybe. Fantasy colour. You've got to remember to stroke that back down. If you go the other way, you will lose your highlights. You've got to stroke it back the other way. And then you get that really nice soft effect. You get rid of that harsh line. Yeah, Suzanne says she likes the rose madder. Yeah, I like the rose madder too. It's just got something. So the white. Oops, and I must have got some colour onto that. So, and remember, being pastel, it will come off, so that's good. Probably better actually putting that away for the moment and using the white Derwent pastel pencil. So they do go hand in hand. It's just I'm using them in slightly different kind of way. Now this small space, I probably could have used the pencils, but I just thought I would use them. And again, giving that indigo blue into there is going to give a very dark green, and that would do anyway. So now you know that when you mix your colours, if you mix indigo blue into a green that you've used, you will get the perfect dark shadow. Whereas if you used a pale blue or a French ultramarine, you wouldn't get that almost black green. You'll get a dark green, but you get a different dark green. But to get a really dark, deep, almost green black. When I did my degree, I actually loved the colour mixing, and I'd planned to do something completely different, but I happened to break my elbow of my left hand, my left arm. So when it came to my first major final, I couldn't do anything because my arm, you can't move. When you break your elbow, you can't do anything at all. You're in plaster from shoulder to fingers. So I decided I would make some black squares. So I masked off with masking tape some black squares on a canvas, on a huge 5 foot by 5. I've still got it actually, 5 foot by 5 foot canvas. And then I had lots of the primary colours. So I had the 2 reds, the 2 blues, the 2 yellows, and I took them to black. So I kept adding black until you didn't know if it was a reddy black or a blacky red. And I put them in the square, and of course I could use my right hand because I could use basically a decorator's paintbrush, a big paintbrush, because that's all I could use. I could not do anything delicate because I couldn't use my left hand. So I managed to do this in these squares because it was masked off. And I made 24 squares, and then I thought, oh god, that looks a bit, the background's a bit ugh. So I thought, well, I know what, I've got a pot of Payne's Grey at college. I'll put Payne's Grey all over the back. So we had a very deep Payne's Grey all over this canvas. And then there were some squares of just slightly coloured blacks. So there'd be a very, very, very dark red or a reddy black, depending on how you looked at it. And I did 24 squares, and I was looking and I lost a square, and I thought I can only count 23, and I got somebody else to come and count, and I'm thinking, well, I've done 24 and I've written I've done 24. There's only 23 squares. And I couldn't understand where the other square had gone. But I'd taken a French ultramarine to a black, and a lot of French ultramarine to a black is a Payne's Grey. Oh, sorry, a lot of Payne's Grey has got French ultramarine in it. That's why it's warm, because French ultramarine is a warm black. French ultramarine is a warm blue, sorry, because it's got red in it. Because you can make a French ultramarine by putting red in a cold blue, but you can't make a cold blue. And so I'd actually made Payne's Grey but didn't realise it. So colour is a wonderful thing, and the best thing about the colours is if you take a green almost to a black, you can get the most gorgeous dark shadows without using black. You want colour in there because black has got no soul kind of thing. Whereas if you have a leaf and you have a black green or a green black, it's kind of, we know that's it, because underneath that leaf is not black, it's green. It's only the lack of light that's making it look black. And so using coloured greys and coloured blacks is so much easier than using black. Now the easiest thing to do is to take black and put red in it. I don't have any qualms with that, but I do hate using black, really. If you take blue and black and red and put them together in equal amounts, you will get black. If you have more blue than you have the other two colours, you will have a blue-black. If you make green and red and blue, you'll have a green-black. So making blacks is quite spectacular. I might actually do that as a video. Actually, it's boring in some respects, but it's really interesting in others. But it just makes things a little bit, you could put a touch of black in there and it would be dark, but it wouldn't have that, that's a dark green. It's definitely not a black. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Does anybody else think like that? If anybody's got any questions, pop them in caps. So that's that. So this is a leaf of this one. So I want it to be fairly similar, but I want it to be a little bit paler. So again, I'm going to use that. Make sure that I'm in frame. I'm going to do this leaf here. So I want most of that to be white, because bearing in mind by the time you've finished, you probably will lose quite a lot of that. Then I want a little bit of the green. And again, right at the tip, I want that indigo. Now, I probably might get away with my a bit bigger brush actually. I'm going to use the number 1 brush for this. So these are the Daler Rowney Rigger brushes, a 1, 3 and a 1, 2 and a 3, and I find they're the best size. And then I have the Daler Rowney, the Art Master Pearl 55 10-0. So you've got the biggest one to get in the biggest areas, and they've got the tiniest one to get in the smallest. And I do like the fact that this is quite dry, because it doesn't affect the other side of your colour books. If you're working on watercolour or you're working in a watercolour pad, then by all means use a water brush, but this might be just that little bit. It doesn't have the perfect mix, and the reason is, I do love it, but the reason we have that problem is cleaning this now. Ow, elbow. Although actually that wasn't bad. You've got to get it very clean in order to get back to that white, and then we're just going to tease a bit of that green up. This is where you don't want any water, but by nature that water brush wants to bring more water in, and that's the only moment you do not need any more water. You've got your lovely blend and you've got a damp brush and you're going for it, and then you get some more water. So everything else about the water brushes are fab. It's just that last moment when the last thing you need is extra water. Now, being, as I say, not a watercolour but reacting like it, means I can blend out any rough edges. And again, if you did that with this brush, you wouldn't nearly get that. You would get a nice soft blend. So that's another reason not to use a water brush. Has anybody got any questions? Now, these are not always called riggers. There's a liner brush. The liner brush number 10 is the one I like. Sorry, there's a Daler Rowney. Oh, sorry, that's the one I use. I apologise. It's the Daler Rowney 10-0 liner brush. Now, a liner brush is not quite as long as a rigger. But obviously, for some colour books with some tiny spaces, it's easier to get into there, and you're not flooded with water. Again, you've got to keep the water out of your colour books, and you don't really want to flood this. You want a really nice little soft blend. You just want a nice soft effect. It's a colour book. When you have watercolour, when you have water and you have your water, can't think of the word, watercolour paper, you can chuck a bucket of water on it if you want and get that lovely watercolour effect. But this is having the colour effect without the water, which is perfect for colour books. So just bear me 2 seconds. So Granny says, is a rigger the same as a script liner? It can be. They tend to be longer. The riggers were for the old masters to get the ships, when they had the sails. They had the ropes and the sheets, all the ropes, and they wanted a continuous line so they could get a lovely black line over a white sail, and they didn't want to kind of blopped it and having to start again. So that's what the riggers do. That's why it's called a rigger. It's for doing rigging on ships. So you can draw right across a long, thin line, and that's why it works perfectly for when I invented watercolouring. You have a continuous supply of soft water coming out. It's not going to kind of whoosh all at once. It remains damp for a long time. So a little bit of watercolour on the end gets darker, and it's like the chameleon pens but in reverse. So you start with the dark colour and it gets muted and muted and muted until you end up with nothing. And that's how I normally colour. Get a bit of colour on the end and you manipulate it, and that's why you use the rigger. But they're quite good for colour books because you can get continuous use out of it. Whereas if you touch any kind of brush, and I've got beautiful brushes, any of these brushes, oh, that was to go away, any of these brushes, as soon as they touch, they're going to give out all the water they've got. They're designed to flood watercolour paper with water and colour. That's what they're for. Liners and riggers are not. Liners are normally longer than this, and I would think they're maybe a bit more difficult to use. I would think this is like a liner, and it drives me insane. I love it, but it drives me insane because it's wonky. It's not wonky, but it's called a rigger. Oh, actually, it's not called a rigger. I would call this a script, because for bending, it's always bending and it's always going somewhere I don't want it to go. But it's designed for fat strokes, thin strokes, when you're scripting. Sign writers use them. And again, a lot of colour, so they don't have to stop from a fine line to a fat line until they've actually drawn the word or finished the letter they're doing. And that's designed for a continuous amount of liquid to be let out at a steady pace. That's what that's designed for. So I would class that as a liner, and that's why it drives me potty, because you're touching it, look, and it's going everywhere you want it to go. These don't do that. These just continuously let out a tiny amount of dampness. So you probably find that scripters and liners might drive you potty, because you won't have a much control, because you're doing this and this is curling up. Whereas what you want is to do this. And I find it hard to use this set, and it actually is not called a rigger. This is the 103 Pro Art. The ones that are riggers are easier to use. This is the number 6 rigger, and it's just not quite as long, but it just has, you see, that just has more control. This is softer, but this is designed as a liner, as a script writer, rather than the rigger, which is a solid continuous line. Does that make sense? Most of these are under £2 each that I buy, and I actually have, which you won't believe, for 99p, and I wish I'd bought the full set. I should have bought them all. I should have just bought them all, but I'm too honest, and I went back and I said, I think you've made a mistake, and they said, no, there's no mistake. I said, I think you have made a mistake. And they said, no, there isn't a mistake. And I said, a Series 7 brush is not 99p. And they kind of went into a dead faint, because somebody priced them all at 99p. I can't find it now. Where did I put it? And it's because I want to keep it safe if I can. There it is. It's a Series 7 fine sable Winsor & Newton, and it's got 99p on it. And they are not 99p. And that's the kind of brush I used to use when I used to do my fine work. I keep hiding it because my girls pick things up for glue, and I keep thinking, please don't use that for glue. Because I think I paid £23 for one. I said, I've got to own one because I'm an artist. But so there we go. No, I don't think so. I don't think they do. It depends what you want. The Daler around here, I think these were two. I think these were £2.50, maybe £3 each. These, and actually, or was it the black ones? I can't remember. I buy them at model shows, but what I tend to do now is I don't even look at the make, and I don't want to mix those up. I just look. I look at the paintbrushes, and if it's long and thin, I have a look at it. Then I look at the price. I just look for long, thin ones. The Art Master Pearl ones, Series 55, I would say that's more like a liner. The Art Master Pearl 55, and they're a couple of pounds. So I normally buy them in threes. So I spend about £5 or £6 on a set. It's very rare, and really for colour books you don't want expensive paintbrushes. Even for other things, I never buy expensive paintbrushes now. So if it says the graduate liner ones, let's have a look. See, let's measure and see what they are. So the liners are 1/2 inch. The riggers are just short of 1 inch. And I mean like 1 millimetre short of 1 inch. What I would class as this one says it's a rigger, and it's 1 inch and almost 1 1/4 inch. Yeah, it's 1 1/4 inch, bar 1 millimetre. And these other ones that I bought as well, they don't say that they're anything. They're 1 1/4 inch. And the Art Master 55s, Pearl Master 55s, sorry, are almost 1.5 inch. They're 1 inch and they're almost 1.5 inch. And I would say they're too long. I would say, what's that one? That's a 103. I would say the best ones are about 1 inch. Either just under 1 inch or just over 1 inch is the best rigger. Anything longer and it's a liner or it's a scripter, and you'll have problems controlling the end because it's too long. I don't think they have more bristles. I think they're just longer. They're just longer. But anything too long and you've got a problem, because you can't control the end. And what we want is, we want a stiff kind of, we want a little point that's going to give out water continuously until we lift that paintbrush up. That's what we want. We want to blend and then we want to stop. And that's why this is good. You couldn't really use a sign one, because again, you're trying to draw a line, your line will be all over because the pressure of this brush would be all over, so your riggers would be all wobbly on your ship. All the rigging would be wobbly. So under 1 inch or 1 millimetre above an inch, but definitely no more, definitely not 1.5 inch. So I would say under 1 inch is a rigger, or under 1 inch would work for watercolouring, for my watercolouring. Anything over 1 inch and you'll struggle. That makes sense. Oh, hi Pat, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Anybody else I've missed? It depends on the size of the pattern. Mel says, so what's the best rigger size for colour books? You see, this particular size, what did I get out? Let me pan out a minute and we'll go through brushes. What time are we on? I can't see what time we're on. Whoopsie. see. Oh, I could talk for 5 minutes on these. I've got about 6 different sets. So, oh, I put that one in there. Oh, that's my Series 7. That's why. That's my Series 7 sable. That's why that's hidden away. Again, this would be not really much good because as soon as I've touched it, it's given out too much water. So you'd have a big wet patch on the other side of your paintbrush before you started. So just ignore those. But you'll probably find everything I've bought are in 3s. So I've got these Pro Art 103 Pro Lens, a number 6, a number 3 and a number 5. These are the biggest I've got. But I wouldn't use them on this page. I'd probably use them on here because I want the colour. I need a damp brush, and so they do work. They don't really, because it's a big space. If I did a little space, it wobbles all over the place, but for a big space like this, it works perfectly all right. Then I have, and I'd actually put these back and then hubby got them out again for me because I didn't want to spend £3 on a brush because it was just short of £10. I thought, oh, I can't afford that. Oof. So I don't normally spend a lot. I bought that one in Ireland, and it was. Does it say rigger on it? Number 3 rigger? No, it doesn't say rigger on it. Oh, it does. It's a 333 rigger. It's a Winsor & Newton number 3, and it's a Cotman, so it's for student grade, but it's long and thin. I bought these 3 from a model show because I went to a model show. I was stuck and I didn't have anything to paint, and these are a little bit too long, but they did work. And these are Italieri, a 310, sorry, a 30, a 1 and a 3. So basically I look for a fat, a thinner and a fine, or a medium. So I can't find the other one to that one. Don't know what I've done with it. Oh, it's there, look. So again, this is another one. This is, and as I say, I wasn't going to have this, but hubby bought them for me. So we have Aquafine De La Rowney, a rigger number 6, a number 4 and a number 2. So again, that's about the size I would use. I normally use the middle one. That's not in there, I've just pulled it out of there. My 010s, I have quite a few of those, and this is a 20 Pro Art half rigger. And that's what I've been using. So the next one I've got is the Art Master, and I've damaged one of them. I must have put it back on with the top and it's got a bit scrunched back. So this is Art Master. I don't know where the other one is. There it is. You see, they're all in 3s. And I have a 2, a 210, and a 0. And the 210, the 20 is obviously. So again, a fat, a medium and a thin. So this is a 2, a 0 and a 20 Art Master Pale Series 55. And then I do have 2 of these, but I've had these a long time. A Series 64 half rigger, and one says a 2 and one says a 20. So somewhere you'll probably find another one. These are ones I've had for many years, and again, you know, they're all fine 01s. That's another 10-0. I have about 6 of those because every time I go anywhere I buy one because I love them, and I don't use any of the others now, but I say I'm going to start and use some more. And then the last 2 are the De La Rowney 10-0 and I've got a 1, 2, and that should be an Art Master. Yep, that's the Art Master 10, 0. So they're just spare small riggers, or half riggers. And then I have a liner, my 10, 0 liner that I like. And the Art Master pearl, they're very, very similar. Very similar ones, just slightly less. The 10, 0 graduate liner is finer and slightly shorter than the 10 series Art Master pearl. But they're for my really fine details. And then the last ones, there's 2 number 1s, there's a 2 and a 3, so there's a 1, 2 and a 3, but I've ended up with, that's actually a bit kind of gone a bit now, so there we have a 1, 2 and a 3. And I will buy this one again because it's my favourite, and they are called riggers. They're Daler Rowney, and they're about £2, I think, £1.80, something like that. And then I have my tiny one. These are the ones I would pick just for colour books. If you've got small spaces, if you have huge spaces, you've got problems with colour. That's why I've got the pastels and I've got the dry colour, because it's all this amount of water that's going to wet it and go through. So I would have these, but then if I had a big space, I'd need a number 6. So you scratch your colour first and then you use the rigger. You can't expect to wet all this all at once because it will just saturate, but I've done a few videos with big spaces and it's the only way to do it. But for small, even that size, this paintbrush is quite adequate to do this in small stages. And most colour books are detailed. If it's a detailed colour book, if you don't do the backgrounds, it's doing the backgrounds that causes the problems with the water a lot of the time. That's why, even though that's kind of small, it still floods just at that wrong moment when you don't need it. Did that make a bit of sense? And of course, once you've touched it and watered it, it's become kind of a watercolour. So that's definitely not straight. It's not straight, so don't try and straighten it. Don't push it down and then bend it down. And so we need a bit of green in there. And this particular size, oh sorry, that's hubby going out. This particular size, I would probably use the pastels. As I say, it's just, I mean, that's the smallest one. When we get to these are going to be okay. But it is a bit of a tiny space for using these. But again, you can prove you can use them. If you only had those, you still can use them. So I've got my flesh pink out. For some reason, it was out. I don't know why. A bit strange, that. So luckily, I've got my white pencil, so I can just put that bit of colour in there and on the end, and that's burnt carmine, so again I want a little bit of that in there. And I'm actually going to use, I don't know where it is, did I put it back? Oopsie, it's missing. Ah, there it is. And this is the very dark blue. The very dark blue, which the name has escaped me for a second. indigo. So again, you would choose the number 1 rigger for this, because it really is a tiny space. Oops, that's a bit too much water. It really is a tiny space. And eventually what happens with this is if you keep drying your brush on it, it becomes saturated. You really need to wring it out. So it's again just a damp baby wipe. But when you use it for a long time, you're literally using it with your brush all the time. So when you come a point where you think, why is that not dry? That's why. Because you've got to have your paintbrush fairly dry. And then you can get these quite dark, dramatic effects. So I think I'm going to do this olive. I'm going to do this one. I'm just going to do this one and a flower, and then I've finished with this particular thing, or theme I should say. That's a little bit kind of cockeyed. So I want an olive colour. So the easiest thing to do is, if you've got the pastels, look for 510, and that's 510. So that's the olive. I'm going to keep the blue out, the indigo, and I've got the white pastel out there. I'm actually going to use the white. What, darling? I will have to go in a short time, but then I'm going to come back. I'm just going to go get my daughter from the station. So this is the blending white, and then I want a little bit of green near the middle. Now I say you can use this particular size, but the beauty of the pastels is you could do a huge leaf, and if you have a rigger you can have a huge leaf and you will not get a lot of water. And so that's why I like it. It doesn't matter what size you're doing, you choose the rigger and you can still get quite a nice effect. Sorry about that. Oh, bye Kenny, thanks for stopping by. So start on the white, and it's difficult to keep it a white, but we've got that flow going now. Remember, you can't do this with the oil pastels, but or anything that's not water based. The Inktense, you would get this line now, but because these are water based, they're not watercolours but they react. What's going to happen is you can then reactivate that bit and then take that colour further down. So you've got a wonderful blend right down to its roots, because you have to stop at that point, because otherwise the white will just disintegrate into green. So if you do it that way and then take the green into the dark blue, or if you stop it there, what we can do then is we can take the white, and you need to be the other way around really, and you need to do this fairly quick, because really you shouldn't touch it twice. If you touch it twice you normally lose the white, and you can blend that bit in as well that way. But really you don't want to do that more than once, because you are putting damp on damp. You can just about get away with damp on damp, but you can't get away with damp on wet, and definitely not wet on wet, otherwise your page will just disintegrate. So I don't actually know if I like that. I think I do, I don't know. It's a different green than what I thought I wanted. Sorry about that. Sorry, Barky Pants. Oh, goodness me. I'm just very quickly going to do this pink. Shush. Shush. Grumpy boy. Sorry about that. So I just zoom in very, very quickly, and you can just see what I've just done, because that was a bit off, and I think I may have to go, because obviously Barky Pants is going to be Mr. Barky Pants. So as you can see, I really needed to kind of move that green in. So I don't like that, but what I need to do is, when this is dry, probably tomorrow, I can go back in there and move it. If I move it now, I'll end up with mush in the middle, because it's damp, and it will stay damp for a while. Now I did touch it twice, but I've got away with it. But if I go back in there now, because I know that wants moving, I don't like that line. I can blend that out, but I can't do it now. I must wait, even though that's driving me potty. But I'll leave it, and then I can go back to it, and then I can solve the problem tomorrow. But I mustn't touch it now, because it feels a little bit cold, but I know that needs at least 24 hours, and then it will not bother it at all. But I must leave it. So I've got two choices. I either don't go as dark to light next time, or I try and get a better blend, or I do all the leaves and then I do them all again tomorrow. And I think you can put more white on top. You can do lots and lots with pastels, but I can't do anything with water now. So that's my play with my new pastels. They don't take much getting used to, but there's some really nice effects. I like the first one I did, and I can't do anything with that. I've got to leave it. So thank you for joining me. And thanks for watching.